Thanks, folks. Thanks, Diamond, Margarita, Jana. Welcome. Okay, as we get started again, welcome to day one of the Young Minds Matter conference. And we're really excited to have you here today for this session. My name is Ruben Gantu. I'm with Prevention Institute, and I'm the moderator for today's session. As we get started with things, please let us know in the chat who you are and where you're coming from, so we have a good idea of who's in the audience today. And we're going to be getting started with our presentation, Preventing ACES, Healing Through Expressive Arts, in just a minute. Thanks, folks, for introducing yourselves in the chat. The chat is going to be a really great place for folks to make comments, and then we also have the Q&A section on the Whova app where you can submit your questions for the speaker. So we'll be getting started in just 1 minute. Great, so I think we're going to go ahead and kick things off. Again, thank you and welcome to day one of the Young Minds Matter conference. My name is Ruben and I'm the moderator for today's session. In just a minute, we're going to be enjoying the presentation, Preventing ACES, Healing Through Expressive Arts. Please continue to let us know who you are in the chat and where you're coming from. So we have a couple of housekeeping items that we'd like to go over before we get started. This is a safe, supportive space. So please help us maintain a respectful and inclusive environment through your participation in the session today. Please make sure that you're muted at all times during the presentation. Please use the chat function in Whova to interact with other attendees. For questions for the presenter, you can use the Q&A function in Whova as well. We have a couple of forms for you all to fill out during the session, and I'm going to put these links in the chat box in just 1 second, but we have a general sign-in sheet, which should only take you about 15 seconds to sign in to let us know you attended this workshop. And then we also have the CEU form. So if you registered for a continuing education credit or CEU, please fill out the form that I'm going to be putting in the chat box as well. And those links are in the chat now. And then finally, we're also going to post a link for the workshop evaluation form toward the end of the session, because we really value your feedback, and it's going to really be super important to help us make sure we continue improving the kinds of offerings that we offer during the session. I mean, during our future conferences. So I'd like to please ask you to join me in welcoming our presenter for today, Sonia Ray. Sonia is a mobile healing artist based in Houston, Texas. She cultivates restorative programming, events, workshops, and facilitations utilizing expressive arts interventions and disaster recovery frameworks. Centering the wellness and recovery of Brown and Black folks is the basis of her life's work, and she believes that wholeness is for now and is also the key to dismantling systemic oppression and white supremacy. Sonia will be joining us through pre-recorded sessions that we're going to be checking out right now, and then she'll be available for Q&A once we're done with the video. So join me in giving a warm welcome to our speaker, And we're going to now enjoy the presentation. We'll be back soon together for a live Q&A in just a moment. Thanks, Aaliyah.
Welcome in, y'all. I'm so excited that you decided to join the session today on preventing ACEs, healing through expressive arts. I am Sonia Ray, and I will be facilitating this session today. Before we get started, I would like for us to participate in some community grounding, community breathing exercises to really present ourselves in this space and get ready for the content and information that's going to be presented. So we're going to do that for the next 3 to 5 minutes. If it feels comfortable for you to close your eyes, you can do that. Or if it's comfortable for you to just watch the screen, you can do that as well. The first thing that we're gonna do is inhale for 3. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Continue to breathe deeply on your own. And on your inhale, I want you to think about anything that you're carrying into the session right now. On your exhale, I want you to release those things and clear your mind, your body, and your spirit to receive whatever you're supposed to in this next session. So inhale, think about all the things. Exhale, release them. Inhale, think about all the things. Exhale, and release them. Inhale, exhale. Continue to deeply breathe. I want you to do a body check, starting at the top of your head, working your way down to your feet. Feel any tension in your shoulders, in your arms, in your midsection, in your lower body, in your feet. Any tension you feel on these last couple of exhales, I want you to release it. If it feels comfortable to you, open your eyes and rejoin us in this collective space together. Okay. So again, y'all, thank you so much for being here with me, being present with me, and participating in that grounding exercise. I'm gonna give you a little introduction of myself, and then we're gonna jump right into the presentation today. So again, my name is Sonia Ray. I am a healing artist here in Houston. And what that means and what that looks like as I cultivate restorative spaces, through programming, events, facilitations, all centering the social emotional learning pieces of expressive arts in the way that it can be used effectively as an intervention to help us cope, to help us positively grow after life disasters, bigger disasters. And really my life's work is centered around healing equity, and all healing equity is prioritizing the restoration of Brown and Black folks' mental wellness and holistic recovery. This conference is about the youth, which are near and dear to my heart, specifically Black and Brown youth, and the way that white supremacy, systemic racism impacts them, and what we can do to bring justice for them and to them and with them, and how we can support their well-being and their healing. And so healing equity work is anti-racist work, and it's the work I'm committed to doing. And in this session, we'll talk some pieces about equity, but our focus today is ACES and the way we can use expressive arts to be tools to support students' overall well-being, students, youth, overall well-being. I previously was a teacher, so I might use students instead of youth periodically just because I am used to that rhetoric. But jumping right in. So I briefly just shared who I am with you. And today, these are our learning objectives. Let me see if I can enlarge this a little bit. Not find. I thought that would have made it bigger. Enlarging it. So we'll work with it from here. But today's learning objectives for Preventing ACEs Healing Through Expressive Arts session for the Young Minds Matter 2021 conference is to participate in expressive arts activities designed to support the mitigation of ACEs, explore ACEs and its potential impact on youth we serve, and make meaningful connections with session content that can be applied to your specific context. Everything that I am sharing is meant to be adaptive to whatever your context is. I've been on Whova exploring some of the different profiles of attendees and different things like that. And we are coming from different backgrounds, different disciplines. And so all of the things that I'm sharing is meant to be applicable to whatever you do, and however you serve youth in whatever roles you occupy in their lives. And so those are the learning objectives for this session. We're gonna jump right in. I keep saying this word, ACEs, ACEs, ACEs. What are ACEs? ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And in the mid-1990s, Kaiser and the CDC conducted the largest longitudinal study assessing essentially social vulnerability in households and the way that impacts long-term health outcomes. And so they coined this term of adverse childhood experiences. And these are experiences that you experience during 0 to 17 years old. And some examples of them could be abuse, neglect, in-home or communal violence. And again, I mentioned social vulnerability. So that looks like food insecurity, housing insecurity, financial insecurity. And this conference and this topic is so important this season because of the unprecedented time we just moved out of with COVID-19 and all of these social vulnerabilities really increasing, and a lot of our social services and after school programs and these preventative things to ACEs were cut out because we were in a pandemic and we had to stay at home. And so we have to be ever vigilant in this season, looking out for ACEs and the way that it impacts our youth. So More generally, the impact on youth that experience adverse experiences during their childhood are devastating over the lifetime of the child. And so ACEs impact the mind and body of developing youth. It can cause health, behavior, and growth risk in the long term. And our stress response system, right, our fight, our flight, our freeze responses, our trauma responses to the world around us is supposed to be a very adaptive, functioning, great, robust system that our body already has to help keep us safe and protected. But when youth are experiencing adverse experiences consistently, our stress response system is always being triggered, adrenaline and cortisol in our system. And what that does over time, it makes our stress response system no longer an adaptive coping tool for us that keeps us safe. It does the opposite. It harms us. It impacts the structure of our brain. It impacts hormonal things within our bodies. And it also can be transferred to different transcriptions within our DNA. And so it has a very, very huge impact on the developing body of youth. And some of the health risk long-term that it can cause is heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and these are all underlying health conditions that have made Black and Brown populations more at risk to death from COVID-19, and more at risk to death and further social vulnerability as time goes on. It also leads to decreased executive functioning and different things like that that we know are crucial for learning and focus in school and at work and when we're pursuing passions and desires for ourselves. And so ACEs is a serious thing that we have to be intentional about looking at and preventing. And so this next activity is designed to see where you land on the ACE spectrum and to really just see if any adverse childhood experiences that you may have had have impacted your health today. So we're gonna pause on sharing this screen right now. We're going to share another screen. So you have an interactive handout that was a part of the HUVA materials. And right now we've already answered the first question on the interactive handout. What are, one second. What are ACEs and some examples? So if you've printed it out, you may fill that out, or if you have a notebook that you're taking notes in, you may go ahead and jot some of those notes down right now. In this next activity, after you've done that, there's also a section on your interactive handout that says ACE questionnaire activity, and it's numbered 1 through 10 with Y's and N's. And you're gonna take the next about 5 minutes to read through these questions on here and either circle yes or no on your interactive handout. Again, if you're taking notes and you did not print out the sheet, that is totally fine. You can do 1 through 10 on your paper and then write Y's and N's for your responses to these questions. So go ahead and take about the next 5 minutes to answer these questions. Once you've answered these questions, you can go right next to it on the interactive handout and click the link or copy the link and paste it into your internet browser to visit our Google document where we're gonna do a collective reflection on this exercise. So 5 minutes, go ahead and read through the questions and answer. So again, you're reading through the questions and you are circling why you're in on your interactive handout or writing why you're in your notebook. I'll zoom in a little bit. More. So as you begin wrapping up answering these questions, go ahead and click that link on your interactive handout or paste it again, copy and paste it again and put it in your web browser. And it should take you to this document in Google Docs. So this is the reflection activity. Writing is also a form of expressive arts, and I'm going to ask you to write more creatively later on in the session. But this is a great way to integrate reflection protocol or open-ended response protocol with youth to allow their voices to be heard. If you work with a big group of youth, this is a way that everybody's voice can be heard and everyone can share without it feeling so chaotic sometimes with the physical voice being heard. So writing is an awesome way to use expressive arts in any context. And so our reflection protocol today is based on the ACE questionnaire activity that you just did. I want you to choose a cell, any cell on the Excel document, and use the paint bucket to fill the cell whatever color you want. We'll go with this color. Then in that box, anonymously, I want you to answer these 3 questions. What thoughts did you have about your ACE results? What physical sensation happened during this process? And then how does ACEs impact the youth within your specific context? Go ahead and take about 3 to 4 minutes to answer these questions and look at the responses of other session participants on this document. While you are responding, just some more impacts of ACEs. I feel like I ran it a little bit quickly. But again, ACEs, the research for it began in the mid 1990s by Kaiser and the CDC, conducting this large longitudinal study looking at adverse childhood experiences experienced during childhood of abuse, neglect, household insecurity, communal and in-home violence, just looking at all of these different factors that negatively impact the long-term health outcomes of youth. Brown and Black folks are disproportionately impacted by ACEs. About 61% of Black children and about 51% of Hispanic children will have one or more ACEs in comparison to 40% of white children. We know that Black and Brown folks already are experiencing at disproportionate rates some of the leading cause of death in the United States of heart disease, cancers, and engaging in higher risk behaviors that are being used as coping mechanisms, right? Like smoking, drinking. ACEs also significantly impacts our ability to learn and critically think and make critical decisions. And so it's also impacting academic achievement for our youth as well. So thinking about this activity that we just did, your own ACE results, your totaled yes that you have experienced or not experienced, and how does ACEs generally impact a youth within your context. Take about 2 more minutes to finish filling out the boxes here. And if you feel comfortable sharing some of your responses in the chat, hopefully we have the chat feature working during the live conference, or if you have any questions at this time that you want to send me during the live session, please feel free to do that right now. We got about another minute remaining. Okay, so we've talked about what ACEs are. We've explored and made more meaningful connections to ACEs for our personal selves and youth that we work with in our specific context. And so now we're growing, we're glowing, we're trying to answer the question on like, how do we mitigate, how do we resolve, how do we prevent? And so some common preventative interventions for ACEs are providing whole system support to households, right? Eliminating those social vulnerabilities that exist within household food and financial insecurities, building relationships within the family system, strengthening relationships within the family system are super important when we're talking about intervention and prevention of ACEs. Getting youth active in group activities, whether that's sports, whether that's a band, whether that's an after school program, whatever the case may be, getting them engaged and interacting with other youth similar ages with similar interests, and really finding out what youth want to do with their free time and with their time is super important. This is another way that we can actively get youth voices heard, right? Young minds matter, and youth oppression is a very real thing. I know even as a youth, feeling like elders just want me to like be seen and not heard is something that I've had to like grow out of moving into my own practice and facilitation and professional career. It's something that I've battled for a long time. And so giving youth opportunity to make decisions for themselves and have autonomy and agency is super important and is a great preventative strategy for ACEs. Mentorship and then early intervention, having conversations, seeing what is up, screening for ACEs early on so that we can intervene quickly is also super important. The intervention that we are going to focus on specifically today is the social emotional learning piece, and that's where the healing arts come in. We already did a reflection protocol with the last activity. We did grounding practices at the beginning where we're practicing breathing. There are other grounding techniques and practices that can be done that are positive coping mechanisms for youth and for adults, honestly, for everybody, that can support just the mastery of our internal selves, while a lot of the times we can't control our environmental context. And so again, this social emotional learning piece is a preventative strategy and what we're focusing on. And because experiencing adverse things in your youth makes our stress response system no longer adaptive, but it becomes maladaptive coping, intentionally teaching these skills of positive coping and self-regulation and communication and being able to have really self-control is going to be key as these youth grow up and become adults and make informed decisions about the future and the future of our world and our society. All of these things are going to be really important. Our current educational system has not been restructured in its model, and this is where children are going to learn. This is where they spend most of their time. And we learned that in the pandemic, virtual learning was very difficult, right, for a lot of folks. And so school is just a pillar institution within our community, but it hasn't been restructured since the Industrial Revolution. And what that really means, it's still very inequitable within its structure. And we're not necessarily teaching youth all the time what they should know to be critically thinking and informed, engaged adults. It's the flaw of the system. I believe it's very intentional. And again, SEL work is a part of healing equity work, which is a part of anti-racist work and dismantling, restructuring the systems of oppression that we have been conditioned under for our existence in this country, especially for Brown and Black folks. And so we are going to transition from PowerPoint mode to doing some more activities. On your interactive handout, you will see a hand that says control and release, and then the I will poem section. So those are the next two expressive arts activities that we're moving into that you can adapt to whatever your context is. And so I am going to stop sharing this screen. The resources are right there. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And so that we are all on the same page, I'm going to share the interactive handout. And I apologize for not showing it earlier. In case folks did not know exactly what I was talking about earlier, I hope that we are on one accord at this time. So again, this is the interactive handout that will be available on Whova to download and to print out for you if you are interested in doing that. This was our ACE questionnaire section, and the last question in this section is, what are some preventative strategies and interventions to combat ACEs? And now we're moving into the expressive arts as an intervention activity. So this is the control and release activity. Right now, I want you to take 3 minutes, because I know I'm long-winded and we're probably running low on time. And so take about 3 minutes to, on the outside of your hand, just write things outside of your control. If you're using a paper, trace your hand, and then on the outside of your traced hand, I want you to write down things outside of your control. 1 to 3 things outside of your control. Write that down on the outside of your hand. Once you've done that, I want you to, on the inside of your hand, on the palm of your hand, or the back of your hand, depending on perspective, I want you to write I want you to draw, 1 to 3 images or symbols of things that you can control within your hand. So again, draw 1 to 3 symbols inside of your hand of things that you can control. Take the next 2 minutes to complete any symbols you are drawing, or if you didn't quite finish the outside of your hand, things you can't control, go ahead and finish that. This next part is a little bit more imaginative. I want you to pick up the things around your hands that you can't control. Pick them up. And I want you to release them into the environment. Release them, things you can't control. So again, pick them up and release them. For youth, oftentimes they can't control their families, their schools, who they hang out with, who they don't hang out with, the say that they get in things. There's so many things that they can't control. And so this release protocol is acknowledging that there is so many things and releasing them to not allow those emotions or that burden of not being in control to just overwhelm and overtake the way that we engage with the world. Now, I want you to trace your symbols in your hand with your fingers. So again, whatever you just put inside of your hand on the paper, I want you to take your finger and trace it in the palm of your hand. And then hold on to it as tight as you can. So again, you're going to trace your symbols that you wrote down on your paper or in your notebook in the palm of your hand, and you're gonna hold on to the things you can control. It's important to acknowledge the things that we cannot control, but it is more important to meditate and focus on the things that we can control. And so we did some tactile things with actually tracing our symbols in our hand and in our palm and physically held on to them. Again, this is a very easy activity to do in any context with the youth that you support, and it can work for older to younger kids. It's not super cheesy for the big kids, and the little kids can still grasp and be a part of this conversation too in a meaningful way. After you've done that, we're going to transition over into our I Will poem. And this I Will poem, it's a little bit of an affirmation activity, right? A lot of our struggles happen internally in our mind. And so teaching youth earlier on, the better, to talk to themselves positively and affirm themselves will be very, very crucial in their ability to be self-motivated, self-regulated, and individual independent thinkers, which are all things that ACES prevents. And so trying to mitigate those things in tangible ways for them is the goal. And so this I Will poem is again teaching positive self-talk, which is some cognitive behavioral therapy things. And it's an affirmation piece. So what I want you to do is think about the things that you can control, right? We're meditating for a while on the things that we can control. We acknowledge the things we couldn't, and now we're further meditating, chewing on the things that we can. And so in this I Will poem, I want you to turn the things that you drew in your palm into statements of what you're going to do, whether that's tomorrow, whether it's in a couple of hours, whether it's this week or even next week. I want you to turn the things inside of your control into an I Will poem. So each line will start with I will. So I will be more intentional with self-care. I will be more intentional with spending time with people that care about me tomorrow. I will find balance for work and personal life this weekend. I will be intentional about taking what I've learned from this session into my specific context and supporting the youth that I serve better than before. Craft your I will poem now. Again, you can use the space on your interactive handout. There are some lines there, more lines than in other places on the interactive handout. Or if you are freely writing in your notebook, you can write that poem down there. Using expressive arts with youth is very, very great because teaching social emotional things are kind of challenging due to its like intangible nature. It's a lot of thoughts, it's a lot of feelings, it's a lot of sensations, things that don't always have physical manifestations. And so using expressive arts creates artifacts that are tangible of these like kind of ideals, these intangible emotions that we feel. So you've created images of things you've released and things you're going to hold fast to. You've created written expressions collectively. Enduring and experiencing things collectively is a significant tool of resilience and recovery. And so we did that earlier in our ACE questionnaire activity. And then this poem is an affirmation that you can look at continuously that can inform the way that you talk to yourself positively. And you can bring it up whenever these negative self-talk types of things creep up. Youth can bring them up whenever these things start happening. We know that bullying is a real thing. We know that an adverse childhood experience is experiencing in-home things where negative self-talk is the normal type of talk in our home context and different things like that. And so this is a way to combat this. And the poem is just a tangible reminder, something that they can see, that they can read, that if they don't even have the ability to muster it up in thought, it can be spoken over them. And so these are all expressive arts tools that can be used to teach social, emotional things, positive coping mechanisms, mastery of our internal selves, increased communication, right? Because I've written this down and I know these are things that I'm experiencing and feeling, I now can communicate this better to the adults around me. I now have the language to communicate these things in the environments that I'm in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. And we've got a few minutes to go into a little bit of Q&A with Solia. Thank you so much for sharing that really important information and kind of walking us through some of the things that we can do with the folks that we're working with. So we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can in the time we've got left. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be unmuted so that you can share, or you can also put your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A section of Whova. And to get us started, I'm gonna pose a question for our speaker to get us started. And so, Leah, one of the things that I was wondering as you were talking about, and especially as you were going through that last activity with the hand and with the poem, what is I'm just curious, like what the response of folks who are walking through those kinds of activities to help with their what they're dealing with and what their feelings are. What are some of the things that you've heard from folks in response to that?
I think it varies. Again, a lot of the activities, especially the hand activity, you can adjust it to whatever the context is. So I've used it, and like with younger babies, it might be like a simple like things that you can hold inside of your hand, right? They may not be able to process like these like kind of deeper feels, like affect kinds of things, but they're able to tangibly like see what they do have control over, whether it's like a ball or whether it's like a game controller or the outside of their hand, like where they go to school or like what house they live in or who they live with, has all been things that I've seen from younger babies. Older babies, definitely things that are a little bit deeper, maybe the way that different people may identify someone on the outside is out of their control. The identity markers that they take on based on appearance, based on all of these different factors, things that they cannot control versus things that they can, like the attributes that they want to be known for and identified as and with.
That actually brings up another question for me. Who are some of the communities or populations that these interventions and activities have been used with?
I think that's a great question. Definitely youth of color. I've worked with opportunity youth, specifically experiencing more specific types of vulnerability like homelessness, the LGBTQIA community. Again, like not necessarily opportunity youth, but still in that 18 to 24-year-old, like college aged range. And then also more recently, I have been able to work with some more seasoned elders with some like mental health, like Alzheimer's, dementia types of things, like more palliative care types of things in a, again, like transformed, altered, accommodated way of the same activity, but it looks different because of the context of the folks that I'm working with.
Right. So it sounds like folks that have either undergone something or folks that are in a period of like transition also. Like when you're talking about that 18 to 24-year-old range, that's one of the things I think these are folks that are dealing with lots of changes very quickly too. We've had one question that came up in the Q&A. What is one tip that you have for people that want to approach the topic of ACEs when working with children and youth?
This is a great question. I think because of the really the stigmatization that exists within our society and what ACEs is really dealing with, it's talking about like a lot of what in the professional realm when we would think of like mandatory reporter kind of situations and different stuff like that. And so like, how do you support and not be the police, I feel like is the like line that you are walking on. And I think first we have to do like a level of like self like work. What does it look like for me to be able to, within my wheelhouse of expertise, within within my context, what I know, like how does it look like
for me to mitigate this thing with the least invasive amount of like force to like what I would say like more extreme, like more policing, more punitive intervention is. And once you figure out where you fall on that spectrum, I think approaching it makes it more comfortable. And of course, relationship building is super important. If you have good relationships with your youth, their caregivers, whether it's family members or outside folks, the better relationships that you have with these folks, the more open dialogue that you can have. And so these conversations won't feel as tense, and you won't feel like you're like trying to like get them caught up, or they won't feel like you're trying to get them caught up if you already have like these foundational things. So I think relationship is a big thing. Self-reflection to see how you're going to proceed is also a big thing as well.
Yeah, you need to work. You need to work on yourself too before you start working with other folks. I want to make sure that we give a big warm round of applause and thank you to Sonia Ray for sharing their knowledge and insight with us. And also many thanks to you all for joining us today for this session. Please take a few minutes to complete the workshop survey. And it's really important because it helps us know how we're doing and what we can do to improve. If you're seeking CEUs, remember that your forms will be in the survey, and the links for all of that I just put in the chat box again. Thank you again, everybody, for attending this session and for attending the Young Minds Matter conference. We're really thankful for your participation. Please spread this information far and wide. Thanks again, and please continue to stay safe. Thank you all. And if folks want to return back out to the Whova app, you all will be able to see on the agenda the next next session here, which is going to be the closing and the closing announcements. So please make your way there. That'll be kicking off in the next 3 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and end this session. Sonia, thank you so much for your great presentation.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Kalia, also. Thank you both. I appreciate you guys.
You've got such a calming presence. I really appreciate it, especially toward the end of the day.
Thank you. That was the goal for sure. It's Friday Eve. We need to relax.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and end the session. Folks, please join us for the closing announcements. Thank you all.